All right. I'm typically a punctual person, but this time I'm being extra punctual because we have a pretty packed agenda and not a whole lot of time. So welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. My name's Joseph. I am a product designer by trade, and you might know me as the tutorial guy here at Sketch. If you haven't seen our courses, Sketch 101 or 102, that's a good place to get familiar with who I am. But uh, I'm not alone here on this call. We're lucky to have Jaime, and I'm going to allow Jaime to introduce himself. But before I do, I'm going to toot his horn a little bit. He's consulted with some of the largest and most complex design teams on the planet. He spent hundreds, if not thousands, of hours doing so. So don't underestimate this man's expertise. Jaime, I'll turn it over to you to introduce
Wow,
yourself.
I hope to live up to the name. Thank you very much, Joseph, for that. I'm Jaime. I'm a design advocate here at Sketch. And as Joseph said, I constantly talk to some of our biggest customers and help them, figure out Sketch, so how to make the best of it and define their best design strategies. I'm going to be today managing all the questions and answers. You will see that there's not a chat available for you, but there's a Q&A bottom at the bottom. So feel free to submit your questions there, right? And we will either reply to them in writing, or we might grab them and hold them until the end of the event. The last 15 minutes will be to answer some of those questions. We will compile them, group them together as much as we can, and try to answer all of them. Of course, we might not be able to answer all of them. Don't worry. First of all, you can check our Sketch website, right? And look for resources there. We have plenty of documentation. You can go to our forum as well. But also, we are preparing a little guide for you guys after the event. It's going to be sent a couple of days after the event. And there we will try to answer all the questions that we have gotten that we didn't have time to answer. So yeah, feel free to ask all the questions that you might have in your hand. You can ask anonymously as well. And yeah, so I'm back to Joseph, and let's get ready to the event for the event.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jaime. Glad you're here. So for those of you who aren't 100% sure why we're here or what we're doing, uh, the topic of discussion today is the fact that InVision is going away, but Sketch is here to stay, right? Uh, the real headline here, or the subheading, if that was the headline, is that once upon a time, Sketch was just a design tool that worked great with third-party design collaboration platforms. But now Sketch has evolved into a design collaboration platform. So today we're going to talk about Sketch as a replacement for the former workflow of Sketch plus InVision, right? So I'm going to hop over to the agenda, give you guys an idea of what it is we're going to be going over today and in what order. Let me share my screen. All right, my hope is that everyone can now see my screen. So to start, we're going to talk about what I even mean in the first place by Sketch as a platform for design collaboration. Then I'm going to pop open the tool, do a live demo of what prototyping looks like in Sketch without Craft. It might be a while since you've used the Sketch native prototyping features. It might be that you've never used the Sketch native prototyping features, and that's fine too. I'll give you a quick intro to that, give you a sense of how that compares to the Craft workflow. It's very similar, not a steep learning curve here. And then you can go learn more from Sketch 102 or from our documentation or from the guide that Jaime is putting together for you all. Next, we'll be sharing on the web without InVision. So what it looks like to collaborate with external stakeholders and even developers on your team. And then number 4 is going deeper into what that developer collaboration looks like in the handoff process without InVision, using again some Sketch native tools that unlock the developer side of handoff. And number 5, my favorite part. Sorry, Jaime. Number 6 is my second favorite part. My favorite part is giving you all a sneak peek of what it is that we're working on and what's coming next with Sketch. So a few little web features, but stay till the end because I'm actually going to crack open an experimental version of Sketch that is not yet available and show you some prototyping features that we've been working on that are pretty cool. I'm sure I'm not alone in that I have been requesting these features for quite a long time, and I think you all have too. Then number 6, second favorite. Sorry, Jaime. Q&A with Jaime. So those leftover questions, or not really leftover questions, In the Q&A, again, Jaime is going to be going through it live, giving some text replies, but some questions are going to bubble up to the surface as either frequently asked or, significant enough that we should address them here live. So
Exactly.
Jaime is going to hop on, address them
I
here live,
I
and
will
I'll be
already
back
answer
up.
one live. There's someone asking
Mhm.
if there going to be a recording of the event. Yes, we are
Mm,
recording the event, and it will be available to you later. You can watch it on YouTube and be aware of your inbox as well.
mhm. Yeah, I believe that the fact that it's live on YouTube means that when the meeting ends, that recording is immediately available. We might have to click a button to make it available, but yeah, there's going to be a quick turnaround on that recording. So rest assured. Cool. All right. So what do I mean when I say Sketch is a platform for design collaboration? First of all, Sketch has evolved into a platform for design collaboration. It wasn't always, right? It used to just be a point of origin, a Mac app where you make stuff, and then you take that where you take that. Now we have the Sketch workspace, right? Which, formerly known as Sketch Cloud. It's the concept of filelessness and storing your documents on a web-based uh, workspace, right? For lack of a better word. I'm defining workspace as workspace. I know that's not super helpful, but I feel like the mental model is pretty ubiquitous at this point. Um, and that storage mechanism, if you think of it as what is a workspace in its simplest form, it's a cloud-based storage mechanism. It unlocks a whole lot and it ties together our whole product suite, which is now comprised of a Mac app, a web app that can be used on any operating system on any platform, right, and any web browser, and an iPhone and iPad app. And the iPhone app, if you use the Sketch Mirror app before, that's gone. This is a brand new, from the ground up iPhone app, which allows you to browse your entire workspace, in the palm of your hand on the go, and also to mirror what it is that you're working on the computer. So much more than just a Mac app. And again, it's the workspace. It's storing documents on a workspace that unlocks all of these collaborative features, right? Sharing, versioning, guest viewers, even guest editors, which we'll talk about briefly in a little bit, comments, etc. This is all unlocked simply by having a document stored on your workspace rather than having it stored locally. Now, you always have the choice. If you have a Sketch subscription, every time you save a document, you get to choose if you want it to go to your workspace or store it locally. So you can keep working the way you've been working and store things on your own server for your own security reasons. Um, but at some point you might say, okay, this thing I've been working on locally, I would like to make this available to the rest of the team. And you can do that at any time. In fact, this is a Sketch document. We're just looking at the Sketch canvas here on my computer. This is stored locally on my computer. And I would like to bring Jaime in because we're missing a part of this slide. And I'm going to ask that Jaime come in and fix that for us. So I'm just going to go to File, and I'm going to take this locally stored document, and I'm going to choose Move to move it to the workspace that I am a member of. I'm already signed into this workspace. Jaime is already a member of this workspace. So you could say he and I are team members together,
Teammates.
right? Teammates, yeah. So I'm not going to fiddle with the name. I'm not going to give it a project. I'm just going to keep things simple and move it to the workspace. And for those of you who don't have the Zoom, I think it's the little box with my face in it, blocking the top right corner of your screen. There's a new little icon that showed up on the toolbar that is my avatar, very top right corner. And that shows who's present in the document. So now this is stored on the workspace. I am the only person present in the document. And now everything that I do, every edit that I make, is saved in real time. And any other member of the workspace that has access to this document can jump in real time and edit the document. So it does look like Jaime just jumped in. I see him in the top right corner. Again, you might have the Zoom window, the Zoom UI blocking that in the top right. And there's his cursor. He's here. So again,
So
these collaborative features.
what's missing is live collaboration, Joseph. There you go.
See, that makes a whole lot of sense. It felt like something significant was missing. So glad you jumped in and fixed that. Uh, But again, it's simply storing the document on a workspace that unlocks all these collaborative features. Some people ask, how do I collaborate live in Sketch? It's a Mac app, right? But it's all about how that document is stored, which again, it's always up to you when saving a document. But we are going to talk more about the workspace and what all that unlocks. But first, I want to get hands-on with prototyping, because typically, if you're using InVision, you're starting with some sort of design artifact from a tool. And I think most of you in our audience are using Sketch as that point of origin. Back in the day, a lot of us used Photoshop, exported flat screens, brought them into InVision, used build mode, added hotspots, and that workflow actually still exists for a lot of people. But for those of you who are using Sketch, I'm going to make the assumption, the presupposition that you're familiar with the design tools, but have likely been using Craft in order to create the prototyping links to upload to InVision. So that being said, I've got a document here that's already been created, this design file, and I'm just going to show you real quick a few things, how to add interactions, how overlays work, very brief introduction to how overlays work, and also how scrolling artboards work, because that might not be immediately obvious. So adding an interaction, first and easiest thing. If you select a layer, much as you would with Craft in order to set it as the target for an interaction, I'm sorry, the trigger for an interaction, you can then choose to add an interaction either by going to the toolbar and choosing interaction, or if you like keyboard shortcuts, just pressing the letter I on the keyboard for interaction. And that's going to turn my cursor into a little pick whip, which is the same as Craft. And then you click on the destination artboard, which is the same as Craft. So very, very shallow learning curve there if you're already using Craft prototyping. You just got to get that new muscle memory of a different keyboard shortcut, I, to add an interaction. There are a couple other shortcuts, but I don't want to make it confusing. There are literally 3 shortcuts in Sketch that do that very same thing. For those of you who are working with flat images or who want to create a trigger or a touch target that is not based on a layer, you want to decouple that clickable area or tappable area from the layer itself. With nothing selected, you can also hit I for interaction and drag a hotspot. So you could always do that. You can also use the letter H for hotspot. So I for interaction, H for hotspot. They are interchangeable, so it's totally up to you. But that is the gist of creating an interaction. And then over here on the inspector, it's important to know that there is now a distinction between the design mode of the inspector and the prototype mode of the inspector. And those are now broken into 2 tabs. So if you don't see your connection lines when you have nothing selected and you say, hey, I thought this was a prototype, where are all the connection lines? When you're on the prototype tab, those will appear again. And then any selected layer, you see the prototyping properties of that layer. So overlays, a little bit different, subtly different. And overlay, if you use the first iteration of prototyping in Sketch, overlays did not exist. They existed on InVision. They didn't exist in Sketch. We heard your feedback. We know they're important. The reason they're important, if you're not familiar with them, is because you might have many screens that can display the same modal, the same pop-up, the same tooltip. And in the olden days, you would have to design what that screen looked like without the pop-up, without the modal, and what that screen looked like with the modal. So if you had 8 screens and 2 overlays, I mean, things start multiplying exponentially, right? So in this case, I have a couple of overlays. I'm just going to show you the first one. It is this search modal that is meant to appear when clicking on this tiny little search button over here on this screen. So there was a little setup that happened ahead of time with this overlay, and it's that this artboard is set to overlay instead of screen on the inspector. So every artboard can either behave as a screen, which can be navigated to, or an overlay, which can appear on whatever artboard it is that you're linking from. This has already been switched to overlay, and you can tell by this little icon, the little box icon next to the name of the artboard. So with that already enabled, all I have to do is link to it, just create another interaction. So I'm going to click on the search icon, press the letter I, and I'm going to click over here on the search modal to link to it, which gives us a little preview of how that overlay is going to be positioned, and I can fiddle with all that on the inspector. There are more tricks that this has up its sleeve. I highly recommend either reading our documentation or watching some of our videos on how that works, because there's more to it that really makes this a unique implementation of an overlay feature. I'm going to now preview this in the preview window, since you might be clicking the play button in the craft toolbar. Here with Sketch native prototyping, you're going to be clicking the play button on the main Sketch toolbar, and that's going to launch this preview window. And then here you can see that my interaction works, and I just don't have a way to close it because I haven't prototyped that yet. So there are a couple of special things that you can link an interaction to. If I select this close button, press the letter I, there are a couple little bits of UI that appear when you're creating an interaction. One is this back button, which will behave as close if it's an overlay, and will behave as a back button if it's a screen instead of an overlay. So that's a nifty way to say, I want this button to just be an escape hatch. I don't know where you came from. I don't know where you're going, but I want Sketch to handle that automatically. And then the one over here on the right allows you to link to an artboard, whether it's on this same page of the document or not, which is really cool. That's unique functionality. Not every prototyping tool allows you to do that, but you can link from page to page using prototyping in Sketch. That's real nice. And then you can also change these things on the inspector after the fact. So you're not locked in once you've made a choice if you make a mistake. Cool. The last thing, prototyping-wise, that I want to point out is how scrolling artboards work, because that's not super obvious immediately. But essentially, whenever you create an artboard in Sketch, you have the option of using an artboard preset. And these artboard presets are more than just a helpful way to create an artboard that's the right size more quickly. They actually tell the prototype player what size viewport it should be displaying at. So this artboard here is set to iPhone 14. That's the size it was designed for, 390 by 844. And you'll notice that when I take the artboard and make it longer, because there is more content here, back on the inspector, it still says 390 by 844. It understands that the device preset should remain fixed and that any overflow should simply become scrollable. So how do you make this a scrollable artboard? I just did. That's done. Just by creating a discrepancy between the length of the content and the viewport preset that is decided. So I'm going to hit the play button to show you that this is now scrollable, and it's looking good. Besides the toolbar at the bottom, which is part of the flowing scrolling body of content. We don't want it to be. We want the toolbar to stay at the bottom, which is a mega easy fix. We leave it at the bottom of the artboard, because wherever it is relative to the artboard is where it's going to be relative to the viewport when we're in the preview mode. So I'm going to leave it at the bottom because I want it at the bottom, right? I'm going to go to the prototype tab and just say fix position when scrolling. So done deal. And again, keep it at the bottom of the artboard, even though it looks weird. It looks like it's way too far down because it's going to be relative to the edge that it's nearest to. So I click play, and there we go. It's fixed at the bottom. And I've got my scrolling artboard, and I've got my nav in the right place. So that's all looking good. I'm not going to waste your time prototyping every other little link that needs to get linked up here. But I do want you all to know that you can create links within symbols and within nested symbols. So the navigation bar, rather than creating hotspots on top, I would want that to be a symbol, which it is. And I would want to go into that symbol and add the links individually, but within the source, so that it applies to every instance of that symbol. So I only have to do it once, no matter how many screens I have with that nav bar. But when you're done doing that, this is what it'll look like. So kind of doing the cooking show trick where I put the turkey in the oven and then I pull out a fully cooked turkey. Here's our fully cooked turkey. This is now something that I am ready to share on the web, right? I want to loop someone in. My one and only friend is Jaime, right? And Jaime is
Yes.
actually not Jaime, I'm sorry, you're not to be
No worries.
trusted as an editor in this document. So I've actually put
Aw.
this in a project, which in a Sketch workspace, a project is equivalent to a folder. It's a container to contain your documents. And within that project, I have decided that no one has access, edit or view access, but me. So kind of taking control over the permissions there. But I do want to share with Jaime as a viewer so that he can leave feedback on the web and that I can receive that feedback here in Sketch. And that's another nice thing that we've added to Sketch, and another way that the workflow is an improvement over using a third-party feedback tool. Comments show up directly in the Mac app. Someone leaves comments on the web, they show up directly on the canvas in the Mac app, and you're able to action that feedback without ever leaving the Mac app, which is something that a lot of us wanted for a long, long time, and now we finally have it. So before I share with Jaime, it's important to know that my work has been saved automatically along the way. Every little change that I've made is using that real-time collaboration engine to save those patches up to the workspace. But I do consider this a milestone where like I've finished the prototype and I want to say, this version is something that I want to make sure is available going into the future. Something I want to be able to share with developers, and I want them to keep looking at that version while I'm editing into the future, right? It's something that I want to be able to share a link to with collaborators when they say, hey, where's the version with the prototype added in? So I'm going to choose create version here from the file menu. And this is optional. Versions are saved automatically every time you end an editing session. But here, again, I've identified this moment in time as a version that's of significance. So I'm going to say prototype V1 finished. You don't have to type a description, but I know you will, just like you name all your layers, right? And there's also a little mechanism down here called starring a version or creating a starred version. That has some tricks up its sleeve. Again, I wish we had more time to unpack all that, but check out Sketch 101 and 102 and check out our documentation on starred versions. It is a mechanism that adds additional control to what's visible to collaborators and also distributing design libraries to your team. So a couple of tricks that you'll really want to know. So I'm going to choose save version. And now that version has been added to the version history with a description, and I'm ready to share with Jaime, and I know that he'll be looking at the right thing. So
Yes.
that being said, I'm going to go to File and choose Share because, again, I've restricted access. Jaime does not have access to this. This is part of the budget mobile app project, and there's one project member, and that's me. But I can choose to add whoever I choose. And by default, a document is going to inherit the permissions from the project it's in. And if it's not in a project, it's going to inherit the permissions from the workspace itself, which you have control over all that. There is an option here to also share a document completely publicly, right? So to create a public share link, much the way you might with InVision, then anyone with the link has the ability to come in to the document. And you can choose whether or not they can download the document, inspect the document, or leave comments, right? That is really kind of opening things up, right? No one's going to discover your document if they don't already have the link, but they'll be able to get in there and do whatever you've enabled if they get their hands on the link. So there's a middle ground that's really nice, and it's that you can share a Sketch document with a particular email address, right? Whether they're a member of your workspace or not. If they're not a member of your workspace, they're not going to autofill or anything. Jaime autofilled here because he is a member of the workspace. But if they're not, you type in their full email address, they get an invite, and then using a Sketch login, which if they don't have one, they'll create one, they can get in and view the document, but no one else can, right? So you can invite guests without worrying about opening things up completely to the public. And you can have an unlimited number of guest viewers. They get access to the full web app. They can comment, inspect, developers get in there, PMs get in there, everyone gets in there for free. Completely free. Only editors ever cost anything, editors using the Mac app. But even if you're working with a contractor, let's say that has their own Sketch subscription, you can invite them in as a guest editor and they bring their own subscription. They're already paying, so you don't have to pay for them. They can just open it up in the Mac app and start working using their own subscription. So this viewer or guest mechanism, whether viewers or editors, is really kind of a generous setup. So I'm going to invite Jaime here. And now that I've invited him, he can't join in the Mac app. He's not an editor. He doesn't have that kind of permission. But he should be receiving an invite where he can crack this open in the web app, and he'll be able to leave
Let me
comments
take a
if he
look.
wants to.
I
Cool. Yeah.
should
Let
be
me
able to
know.
receive it. Yeah,
Let me know if
just want
anything
to make
looks
sure that I got it.
weird to you.
Yes.
Cool.
So,
In the meantime, it looks like there is a comment on the canvas. There's this little gray dot here. So if I click on that, again, you can see that there has been some back and forth feedback that has occurred between myself and a stakeholder who only has permission to view this on the web. So that is pretty nice. And then when Jaime does eventually get a comment in there, it will appear here on the design canvas. Um, we're falling a little bit behind on time, so I trust that Jaime is going to add a comment.
so
It'll
yeah, I will
show
add a
up once
comment
we get
later.
over
Don't
to the
worry.
web.
You can skip that
Yeah,
and move forward.
I'm not waiting for you, Jaime. I don't have time for that. None of us have time for that. But I'm going to take us over to the web to show the experience of what's going on Jaime's end, or what's going on any stakeholder or viewer's end. If you share an individual document with someone as a viewer, they're going to get an invite to view that document on the web. If they're a member of your workspace, they'll be able to browse the entire workspace on the web. And here we have my workspace, which Jaime is also a part of. And in here, you can see that budget app, which is the demo document, the turkey that came out of the oven with all those prototype links. And if I open that up, we get what anyone will see, a full canvas view in the web. And this works on Windows. This works on Google Chrome, Firefox. Doesn't matter what platform or browser you're on. And again, this is the free viewing experience that anyone and everyone gets who you invite into your document. So it's a fully vector rendering of the design canvas. These aren't just JPEGs. They aren't PNGs. It's not a flattened high res or low res screenshot of your work. It's full fidelity, which is pretty awesome. And it is from here that a viewer is able to add comments. So there's a little comment button on the toolbar, and they're able to click where they want to leave that little annotation, and they're able to type the comment. They're able to tag people. They're able to, add bold and italic text and emojis and all that good stuff. And then that comment will get fired off. And you can also resolve comments when they're done. So if this feedback here has been actioned, I can hit this little checkbox and resolve that comment. Done deal. Awesome. So with commenting out of the way, the prototype was really the meat and potatoes of what I created in Sketch. At least it's what I intended to share with Jaime and with other viewers. So one thing I didn't mention when I was creating those prototype links in Sketch was that there's one more mechanism in Sketch to control your prototypes, and it's called a start point. So I'll actually go back here for a sec. This little flag on the artboard at the top here means that this artboard is a start point, which means this is a point at which I would like people to start their journey in the prototype player, right? When they open up the prototype, that's where I want it to open up. But you'll notice I also have another start point here. There's another little flag here. And you control this on the inspector. You can turn these start points on and off. When you have multiple start points in the same prototype, that shows up as multiple prototypes that you can play in the prototype player. And you can share links to those prototypes individually. So I'm going to click on the prototypes tab here so you can see these two separate prototypes, and I can click to play it. And even though they might be interconnected, again, they're start points. So I can choose, which prototype I want a user or a viewer to start from. And now that I'm in here, I can click through, do my thing. But you may have noticed that when I click, orange on oranges probably isn't a good example, but when I click and I miss the hotspots, just like InVision, you can see those hotspots appear on the screen. That's like hotspot hinting. If I go back, when you share a prototype from here, this link will go directly to the prototype viewer, and you can choose whether or not you want those hotspots to be enabled or disabled. So if you're doing some user testing and you want the user to be able to struggle, and you want to, glean insights from those struggles, then you might want to share with hotspots disabled, right? So you can capture their struggle without flashing the things that they may have not noticed in the UI and skewing your research. Yeah, and when you do so, that link again links directly to the prototype player. So they're good to go. All right. So now that we have taken a look at the prototype player, let's assume that it's a developer that has the link that's viewing the prototype, and now they want to dig in and start turning pixels into code. From the web app, if I double click on an artboard, it brings me into an isolated view here. And from this isolated view, the inspector on the right-hand side has 3 tabs: comment, version, and inspect. It's on the inspect tab where we unlock the ability to get measurements between layers. We have all of the properties for the selected layer. We can see if something is simply a random batch of text properties or if it's an actual text style. You can click to view all the text styles within the document. We have this viewer where you can actually, let me do this with a symbol here, because this whole symbol is probably a good example. If I click on the name of the symbol, it brings me into an isolated view of the symbol itself. And you can also browse all the styles that are in the document. You can browse, well, let me go to the components view here. You know what, for whatever reason, this document is not showing my components in the viewer here. I probably messed up on setting things up. But you're able to view the pages of the document, the components within the document, and the prototypes within the document. And that is all interconnected with Inspect. So again, when I have a symbol selected, there is a link here so you can link directly to that isolated view of the symbol. And all of these properties, all the labels for these properties are clickable, so you can copy them and paste them directly into code. And colors have a little trick up their sleeve where you can actually choose the language that you would like that color to be represented in code. And then at the very top, you can copy all of these properties together at once using the copy CSS button. That's real nice if you're creating for the web, or if you're even just writing some code, some HTML and CSS to prototype your app using web code. You also have the ability, if you select an individual element, you have the ability to download that asset. There's a little download button here. And if you don't want to go and pick individually through all the assets, when you're at the main screen where you see the canvas view, there's also a button here to export assets that'll export all of the assets that have been made exportable in Sketch, right? So you got to make the assets exportable so that the web app and developers know which elements are even meant to be downloaded as assets in the first place. So you do that little bit of setup ahead of time, and then boom, one click, and the developers have everything that they need. All right. So I know that was a really quick overview of Inspect and developer handoff, but because that is a very commonly used set of features in InVision, I want to make sure you know that we've got you covered there as well. Now the fun part, what's coming next? A few things that we're working on the web. I'm gonna hammer through in slides, and then I'll take you into that experimental version of Sketch, and I'll show you the prototyping features that we've been working on, the fun stuff. So stick with me. Coming to the web soon, Inspect in Canvas view. So I just showed you that I had to navigate into this isolated artboard view. I had to double click on an artboard and go into this isolated view where I could then access the Inspect tab. We're bringing Inspect up to the surface so you can remain in the canvas view, and you can comment and inspect and get all that done within the context of the canvas view. It really smooths out the workflow, not having to context switch between different modes each time you decide you want to navigate from one screen to another. So much smoother. And again, this view is fully vector, so you have the benefit of the full fidelity of the vector-based design canvas as you're inspecting layers, which can be really helpful if you gotta zoom in there and see the details. That's coming soon. That's not available just yet. The next thing is the ability to pin documents. So we know that your workspaces are starting to amass many documents, and sometimes a project is the answer, but sometimes you just want something that you're working on to stay at the top. So pinning a document will allow you to do that. This is also coming soon. And then for those of you who have amassed a ton of documents or have a lot of team members, you may already be on a business plan, or you may be considering a business plan to unlock some additional administrative features for the larger workspaces out there. We hear you. You want user groups. We're bringing you user groups so that way you can invite entire groups of users to documents and manage permissions on a group level rather than individual people one at a time. And then archived projects. That's just the ability to get a project sort of out of the way if it's done and put it in a place that isn't the trash, right? It'll stick around. It just won't be sort of bubbled up to the top with all the projects that are most relevant to you and your team at the moment. Okay, the fun stuff. I'm going to crack open an experimental build of Sketch, super secret experimental build. And my computer's lagging a little bit. I am running an unbelievable number of apps at the moment. It's pretty gnarly over here. Okay, I'm going to delete a couple of things from the last time I ran through this, and I'm going to show you something that we've been asking for a very long time. Kind of two things. It all wraps under one umbrella, but we've been asking for a long time for the ability to trigger interactions on hover, not just on click, and we're finally bringing it to Sketch. It's going to be in a beta version of Sketch in the near future, so keep an eye out. This is not something that's a dream for years from now. This is real. This experimental version of Sketch is, no movie tricks. It's the real deal. Not only the ability to trigger an interaction on hover, but we hear you on, we don't want to make a million different screens when we have different states for something that, say, needs to change on hover like a button. The add to cart button, for example, we may want that to change on hover, but we don't want to make two versions of this entire screen so that we can show what it looks like when it's not hovered and what it looks like when it is hovered. And then also what it looks like when it's pressed, which we've got you covered there too. So let me first show you the trigger on hover. Let's say that this icon here on the toolbar, the cart icon, let's say clicking it goes to the cart, right? But hovering over it, we want it to show a little mini version of the shopping cart, which I have here. It's an overlay. Now, we've always been able to create a hotspot, or for a year and a half, we've been able to create a hotspot that links to this overlay on click, but hover is what's new here. So I'm going to press H and create a hotspot. I'm going to drag it around. I'm being lazy. I should go into the symbol source and add this to the symbol source. Being super lazy, slapping a hotspot on top. And now I have my little pick whip. I can link over to the cart overlay. Everything is the same so far. But now over on the inspector, we have a new drop down. You can choose between tap/click, hover, and press. And what press means is it's going to show while you're pressing. And when you stop pressing, it's going to stop showing. So you can think of it as like on hold versus tap is toggling. You tap, you let go, and the action has been triggered. I'm going to switch this to hover, and I'm going to open up the prototype player. And in the prototype player, you can see that hovering over this now makes it appear. And it's smart enough to know that if my cursor remains over this overlay, it doesn't disappear. Because you might expect if you leave the touch target that the overlay might disappear because the hotspot, the touch target, is what's determining what triggers the interaction. But again, it's smart enough to know the area that the overlay occupies, and it keeps the overlay on the screen until your cursor navigates away from the whole thing. So real nice. Nice that there was consideration made to that. That is triggering an interaction on hover, but that meant involving multiple artboards, right? I could have triggered a transition from one artboard to another, or I could have triggered an overlay, which is also another artboard. But I don't want to do that for this add to cart button. The add to cart button, it's too small to justify duplicating this entire artboard to show what it looks like on hover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate just the button itself. Pressing Command D, I just created a duplicate right on top of itself. And now on the prototype tab, we have this new option, Customize Layer Visibility, which allows me to say under what conditions this layer should show or hide. So I could say, I would like this layer to show on hover. Done. That's it. The thing that I didn't do is change the appearance of the button, so we're not going to be able to tell anything happened. So I'm going to go back to the design tab and I'm going to say, I want to use this other symbol. So now this black version of the button, which is on top of the purple version of the button, is going to show only when it's hovered over. And you might be saying, well, I see it right now and you're not hovering over the button. But in the prototype player, that's when the effect kicks in. The black one's now not visible because I told it only on hover. So now when I hover over it, there it is. And I didn't have to create another artboard. All I had to do is duplicate a layer and pretty much check one box. So that is really, really nice. I could also duplicate it again if I want to. And I could say that I want this version to appear, let's say instead of on hover, on press, right? So I can create a press state there. I just need to make a change to the design. So let's just say the text dims on press to show it's kind of being pushed in. So now I have the hover state on hover. I have the press state on press. I may have messed that up in my layer stack here. Let's see. Up. You can have hover and press enabled at the same time. That is where I went wrong. So I want to turn off hover and have that only display on press. So now only the hover one turns on when I hover, only the press one turns on when I press. So pretty cool. 3 states, 3 layers, super intuitive. You don't have to juggle any crazy new features that handle, weird overrides or any sort of like nested prototyping functionality. It's just show or hide the layer. Done deal. The next part of this, the last part of this, is the ability to toggle something so that the visibility stays when the cursor moves away. So hover's cool. When you hover over something, it shows or hides. When you hover away, the opposite happens, right? And we don't always want that to happen. I want this little switch up top to stay switched after I switch it, right? That's how a toggle is a toggle switch or a segmented control is meant to work. So I'm going to duplicate this on top of itself. I'm going to switch it to the alternate version of this symbol that I have, where the button on the left is the one that's selected. And if I just toggle the layer visibility, you get an idea of the effect, right? You turn the one on top on, and it looks like it's switched to the left. Turn it off, and it looks like it's switched to the right. So the one on top, I'm going to head to the prototype tab. And instead of customizing the layer visibility based on showing or hiding on hover or on press, I'm going to choose toggle mode. When you have toggle mode selected, that assumes we mean click, right? The only way to toggle something is to click it, right? To trigger that toggle. It's done. That's it. Now, if I go into the prototype layer, I can click to toggle the visibility of that top layer, which gives us the appearance of that switching back and forth. So again, no weird nested prototyping functionality, just toggling layer visibility. Very simple implementation that unlocks a lot of possibilities. So I'm super excited about this. Again, coming in a beta in the near future, and it's going to allow us to prototype without creating duplicates of our artboards, right? Which are precious. And that is the idea of our new prototyping feature. So let us know what you think too, now that you've seen them, now that the cat's out of the bag. There is one more thing. We've received a tremendous amount of feedback from InVision users, from folks like you, and we hear you, and we are working on it. It is being able to comment within the prototype player. So that is something that we're working on, coming in the future. I don't have an ETA for you, but it is something that we're actively working on finally because you all have requested it. And you might be thinking, we've been requesting these things for a long time, but the fact that InVision is going away, we don't take it lightly that you are relying on us in a whole new way. There has been a workflow for you that's unlocked by third-party tools, and we know that we now have to assume the responsibility for those features when that third-party platform goes away. So your feedback is being received and implemented in a new light. Just know that. So make noise about your requests. We are listening in a renewed way, and we want to make sure that Sketch serves you as a holistic replacement for Sketch plus InVision and what that workflow looked like for you in the past. All right, enough out of me. we've got some time left, and I'm going to dedicate that time completely to Jaime. I'll be here as support if there's any way that I can support him, but I'm sure your Q&A has been rolling in all along. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here.
All right.
And Jaime, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have answered quite a lot of questions while you were at your thing. And, I got some of the important ones. There's one that's got repeated quite a lot that I think we need to address publicly, right? People are asking for some type of partial sharing, right? So if I share, can I share just a particular set of artboards? Can I share a particular set of documents, of pages? Can I share a particular artboard, a particular, component, right? And don't have access to the rest of it. So at the moment, we don't have that feature exactly as you're thinking about it. There is a couple of workarounds that you can do, right? You could, remove and get all the parts or the parts that you don't want to share and create a star version of that. And then any viewer and any visitor, an external guest will see that star version and will only have access to that content, right? They could still be able to browse a different version, so they can still get around it, right? But at the moment, that's a good way. The other way that I can think about it is that you can go to an arbor and just copy the link to that arbor specifically. Like if you double click on an arbor, the URL will change, and you can take that link, and that will drive again the visitor just to that arbor. Again, they will be able to browse around if they want to, but that really usually helps on just sharing what you need to share, right? Or just being more specific. And also, based on today, I think we got that question. We have 55 answered questions, and I think 30 of them were that. So we will take this feature request, and we know we know how important it is for all of you, and we'll pass it on to the product team. We'll pass it how important it is, and we will consider it. And I cannot answer for them, but I will make sure that that your voices are heard in the product team, so they can address it properly. And what else? We got a couple of good questions as well, right? Somebody asked if there's a way to view all documents in a central location, right? And yes, the workspace is the space for that, right? If you go to the web app, if you go to the all documents, you will see all your documents there, right? Is there a way to hide the prototyping arrows and the commenting dots? Yes, there is. Joseph, do you know from the top of your head the keyboard shortcuts for it? I know
The
it's for
shortcuts
comments.
is the shortcut for comments
It's Control
Control
N.
Command.
Control N.
Oh, I had that all wrong. Control
Control
N.
N and Control Shift N if you want to see the result or not. But for the prototyping links, for the actual, spaghettis that you get there, there is a shortcut for that as well. But if I don't remember it at the moment, however, you can
There is a
always go to it.
shortcut, but if you have nothing selected and you're not on the prototype tab, they
Mhm.
automatically hide, which is really nice. That was one sort of side effect to us adding. I don't know if it was a side effect or a primary consideration, but being able to navigate between the design tab and the prototype tab, you don't have a bunch of clutter on your screen when you're in the design tab, and you do have all the prototype links that are relevant to you when you're in the prototype tab. If you have a layer selected, it shows up either way. If there's a link from the selected layer, that'll show up either way.
Exactly. Also, how do you manage DSM, design system management, in the cloud version? We have the component view, and the component view will give you access to all your layer styles, text styles, all the components from there. All the organization that you have created for them will be replicated as well on the cloud, right? So you can easily browse all your components and every part of your design system from there. That's the functionality that we offer at the moment. Let me take a look at some of the other questions that we got here. Mhm. So the possibility of viewing the prototypes without creating a sketch account. So to view a prototype, yes, you can share the public link, and they don't have to create a sketch account in order to visit and preview that document. However, if you do want them to comment on it, they will need to create a free sketch account. And the reason for that is that we don't want, anybody to spam a lot of your comments, right? If they find the public links, but by any reason, then it will allow anybody without even creating an account to just, spam as much as they can. So we don't allow for that. They need to create a free sketch account in order to comment on a prototype, right? So somebody is asking here a way to convert InVision prototype files into Sketch. So you can export your documents from InVision, right? And from there, you can either recreate a prototype into Sketch. It will depend on how the document was created. If it was a Sketch document that you uploaded, it's very easy. You can work on your Sketch document and just do the prototype in there. And if you want to, if it was created just with external images in InVision, then you can download those images and recreate a prototype. So that will be the two ways. Anyway, in the guide that we're going to share in a couple of days, some of that is already explained. So just for you to know the different scenarios that you can handle there, right, that you can have for. All right. Can we link to prototypes only and not allow canvas view? Yes, you can. If you go to a prototype specifically, right? If you go to in your workspace, if you go to look at the prototype, if you go to the three little dots, you can copy the link either with hotspots or without hotspots, and that will link directly to the prototype. So that way, you can also make sure that you can do some user testing if you do without hotspots. So it doesn't show where they can click. And if you share with hotspot, that's useful for product managers, for devs, or anybody else. Let's go through some of the questions that we already answered as well, just for everybody to have them there. Do my web developers need to buy Sketch? No. All viewers are free and they are unlimited. So you can invite any members as long as they don't need to jump into the Mac app to design anything or to change a design. They can use the web app, browse, pan across, they can inspect, they can download any assets. All of that is available for free. It's unlimited viewers. So yeah, they don't need to buy Sketch. Well, so I was about to read like, I'm going to leave, sorry. All right, is the pin feature visible per user or per team? It's per user. You just define what documents you're going to pin, and that's going to be for you only. All right.
That was a really good question.
Yeah.
That is a question that I didn't ask and should have asked.
I stumbled upon the answer the other day in one of our chats, so that's why I
Yeah,
picked it.
I am so useless when it comes to features that I have not played with yet. You know what I mean?
It happens to me too.
Yeah.
It's so big, right? And it's so hard to know all the little bits. So as we create them, and as we create them, we always listen to our users and we always try to just make sure that it's the best tool available, for all kinds of users, because we do have, from the lone freelancer to the massive corporation. And then after you have them, all of those, like knowing that you just work with a subset of features, right? And the older you are, I guess the worse it gets, right? So yeah, we still have a few minutes left. So let's go through some of all the other questions. Prototypes, a lot of people have asked for phone wrappers or device wrappers. And no, at the moment we don't have device wrappers, but make sure, remain sure that everything that we show, we will show them in the size that you made the arbor. So it will show in the size of the device. When you create an arbor, if you pick from one of our templates there, you can pick from any device, and we always keep them updated. So you will have the latest devices there. And when you create a prototype for that, it will show in that size. You can always make the selection to make sure that you're looking at the right size as well, right? So we don't have the device wrapper, but we'll make sure that the size is the correct one, right? Somebody asked for component states, but you already answered that one, Joseph. So can non-editors view the inspector? Yes, and actually that's a permission that you can set when you invite a viewer to a document or to the workspace. When you invite a viewer to a document, you can select if they can download any assets and if they can inspect, right? Also, if they can comment or not. Somebody asked if the prototype player also works for desktop designs, and yes, we only showed a mobile app, but it works for any arbor, any size. So if you have a website there, it's gonna work just as well. What else we got?
Yeah,
We got a
same
bunch.
thing.
Mhm.
That whole device viewport thing applies for web designs as well. So if you create a custom artboard size and you open the prototype player, it's going to try to fit the whole thing on your screen. You're going to say, what the heck? Like, that's not how a web page should look. Like, it should There should be
Hmm.
the area above the fold, and then the rest of it should be scrollable. So again, we have device presets for web windows. Even though a web window isn't a device, we still have
Hmm.
presets for that, and the scrollability of that in the prototype player depends on you choosing a device preset that has a viewport size associated with it. So before you run into that issue, because I do it all the time.
So we have another question here. Is it possible to join two workspaces with one license? Yes, you won't ever need to pay twice, right? So if you get invited to any workspace, if you're already paying for Sketch, they don't need to pay twice for you. You don't need to pay twice for it, right? What else?
That's a just to clarify, that's as a guest editor, right, Jaime? Like
Mhm.
if you want to be brought in as an official member of a workspace and you're an editor, you occupy a seat in that
Yes.
workspace, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. If you are part of the workspace, you occupy a seat. If you're a guest for a particular set of documents, that's you're a guest, right? You're external to the workspace, right? And if
And
you're paying for your,
you could be a guest on 1,000 different workspaces,
hmm,
unlimited, as long as you have your own Sketch subscription.
yes.
Yeah,
All right, we have DSM migration path from InVision. It's something that we're looking into, but we don't have anything to say just yet. I've seen the question asked a couple of times, right? And another question that has come a couple of times already is being able to comment directly on prototypes, right? And that is something that we are also studying, and we think is going to come later this year. We don't have a timeline for that just yet, but it's something that is being very requested as well. Hmm.
there's no way we won't have that one ready in time for InVision's last day.
Hmm.
We've all got plenty of time to make the transition. That includes the time that our product team has to get it together on your feature requests.
Yeah. So we're almost on time. We have 2 minutes left. I don't know if we want to take some time to, say goodbye, or we want to continue answering questions until our time runs out.
Do we have any other questions that stand out as
I'm
a good
trying to take a
balance
look and
between
see.
quick and valuable?
No, I think we went to the most important ones. Yes, there are a few questions. Just make sure that we're going to take all these questions and we're going to try to answer all of them in the guide that we're going to share. And
Sure.
if not, you can always book a session as well.
Hmm.
In the email that you got for the event, there's a way to link or to book a session with me, and I'm more than happy to spare and take some time and talk about the questions that you may have. And also check our forums, right? In the forum is a great place to ask questions as well. So forum.sketch.com. And also check our documentation. We have all our documents, there, and they are super comprehensive. So feel free to browse sketch.com for any other, answers to your question. And other than that, well, I will say, I will plug in here the support team, product support at sketch.com. These guys are amazing, and they really take care of everybody that writes in. So if you have any questions, you can write them and they will happily answer you. So yeah, that's it on my side.
Bravo, Jaime. Thank you for shouting all that stuff out. Um, yeah, we do have a lot of resources. This presentation was fast and shallow. There's a lot
Hmm.
more great stuff to learn, but I hope we inspired some confidence that there is some stuff worth finding out more about. And again, take advantage of Jaime as a design advocate and book a session with him if you want to know more about any of this stuff or how your particular team should be implementing this stuff. I mean, Jaime really exists at the intersection between what's available to you feature wise and how you should be using it based on your team, your needs, your scale, etc. So he's a great resource. Take advantage.
Thank you very much,
Awesome.
Joseph. All right.
That's about it. That's about it from me. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you again, and we'll see you again next time.
Right. Bye.
Bye everyone.